I master the Force, and the Force serves me.
What's up, everybody? And today we're talking about Maul Shadow Lord. So right off the bat, I just want to say I'm going full spoilers for this one. And there was something when I was watching the show that wasn't sitting with me, and I figured it out. And so in order to kind of make my point, I will also have spoilers from Maul's episodes of Clone Wars and Rebels. So this is spoilers all around. So if you haven't seen Clone Wars, Rebels, or Maul Shadow Lord, sorry, this isn't the video for you. Unless you want to stick around and you don't care. So right, we're gonna get right into it. This is a good show. I'm not a hater. All right, I think this is a good show. I enjoyed it, but there was some things that were lacking for me, and I feel like I was disappointed by the original setup of the show, right? So I feel like based on the trailers and probably the IMDb, little summary that I read for the last video I made on the show, it is Maul is resetting up his syndicate, kind of coming back, from a loss, and he also might get an apprentice. Right? Okay, so two things. So let's start with the syndicate part. I feel like this show does not really set him up to be rebuilding anything. In the first couple episodes, he is getting revenge. He's murking people. He is getting to their leaders and taking them out. He got Barrio, I think that's his name, to end up eventually coming to his side and being underneath Maul. And so I was like, okay, cool. We're going to kind of do the Clone Wars thing again. In Clone Wars, he, took out the Black Sun, and, they went against the Hutts. And they were so big that the Pikes ended up being like, yo, you guys are cool, we want in. And so I was like, all right, cool, we're gonna kind of do that again, but instead of a big syndicate, maybe it'll end up being a small gang or something like that. And when you watch the show and kind of what we get to at the end, it doesn't feel like that happens at all. In fact, Maul doesn't really build anything after, I feel like, the first couple episodes. He just spends most of his time trying to convince Devin to be his apprentice. And you might be like, well, that's not true. And it's like, number one, his right hand literally is like, what are we doing? What's the plan? You're so invested in this girl. I forget what episode it is, but she's like, I don't understand the vision. And the other Mandalorians are like, hey, we were on board when we were fighting the cops and stuff, but now the Empire's here, and it seems like, everything's unclear. We just want to get paid more because, things are escalating, and Maul isn't even able to facilitate that need, and so they end up leaving. Granted, they die, but even they're like, we're out. And so Maul doesn't really rebuild anything. So when we get to, the last couple episodes, and the Jedi Master's like, oh, yes, we have to help the Shadow Lord, I was like, the Lord of what? He didn't do anything to really kind of come back other than the first two episodes. And even then, my problem with the first couple episodes is all right, he has this crew that's fiercely loyal to him, but there's no real reason why, except for maybe his right hand, because she used to be a Mandalorian. But even then, it's well, wouldn't she just be someone who's working for whoever's in charge of Mandalore right now? So doesn't really make sense. And then all of the people that he goes after, we didn't see in the Clone Wars. I was like, where's the dude from the Black Sun? And so I was just kind of it just feels like random people that he's going against. And so there's no real reason for him to be called the Shadow Lord. And so I feel like they set up an interesting premise and that they didn't follow through in this series. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. I just feel like, you sold me something and then I got something else. In terms of Maul potentially getting a new apprentice, I feel like, and maybe it's just me, majority of the show was Devin doesn't want to join you, dude. If she needs your help, she'll team up with Maul, but there was no point where I felt like she was oh, she might be teetering on oh, she might join. She seems pretty she was she's kind of a young adult teenager, so she's a little snippy and stuff like that, but there was no moment where I felt like she was going to turn to the dark side. And so I was like, okay, clearly the only way they're going to get her over is if the Master dies, and then she'll be angry, and then he can get in there and get her to change sides. Lo and behold, I ended up being right. So again, based on the idea of Maul rebuilding his syndicate and getting, potentially a new apprentice, I just felt like this show didn't do that. And I found myself being well, like, okay, I guess this is not that show. So in that aspect, I was disappointed. Maybe I'm crazy. Let me know down below. But again, I think the show is good. I enjoyed the show, especially once we got to the end. I was like, oh boy, we're cooking. Like, you know what I'm saying? Star Wars, when it's doing its animation, has been the best since Disney has taken over. Like, the animation part of it is like, all right, I'm probably going to get something good out of this as opposed to any of the live action stuff. Of course, there's always asterisks, you know, like Andor. But yeah, for the most part, I trust when they're doing like animation. So that being said, some positives of the show, like gorgeous. Like anytime they did a city shot, it was just like, this is just a painting. Like I love this so much. I love the way that everything looks. I was saying in my last video that whenever Maul is, or actually any of the Quizzers or whoever, are like swinging around their lightsabers, it looks like it's like made out of fire. It's so sick. I love that he's actually killing people. Like at first it's at robots, but then you actually see like other beings being chopped down. And I'm like, okay, we're getting, you know what I'm saying, people are getting blasted. Like this isn't too PG. Like we are getting in there, and I enjoyed that about the show. I love the crime part of this. You know, not that I'm like for cops, but like I was like, okay, I'm loving this crime story. This cop who's like, no, I can figure this case out on my own. You know, you and me, two boots. We don't need to, you know, call in the Empire. I do find interesting stuff with droids, which I feel like Star Wars never wants to really tackle. Of like, is it wrong that Two Boots wants to follow the protocol that he has inside of his head of like, hey, we have to, you know, call the Empire? And then no one ever really deals with the fact of like, you can just wipe them, or, you know, Two Boots is about to call in the Empire and then the dude just like shuts him off. I'm like, that doesn't feel right. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like Star Wars never wants to go there. But yeah, I loved all of the cop stuff. You know, them eventually the Empire being called in, and it is like when you're watching like a cop show or a movie and it's like, oh, the FBI came in and it's like, this is our jurisdiction. You're like, damn it, like, you know what I'm saying, I gotta solve the case, you know, undercover now, kind of. I was like, all right, cool. The only thing I didn't enjoy was the family stuff. I just didn't care for the kid's story. I know they tried to set him up as like, oh, he's a neglectful father, but he wants to be their first kid, yada yada. I was like, we could have chopped this out. I felt like they set up the whole like, his wife works for the Empire, and then we don't see her, and I was like, I kind of wish if I could rewrite this, that the dude that came from the Empire that was like kind of bullying everybody in the precinct was his wife, and we had just cut out the son from the story of like, all right, we're gonna call in the Empire, and like the person that he has to deal with is his wife, and it makes things not only emotionally harder for him, but also like she kind of knows him, so she kind of knows his patterns, you know what I'm saying? So it's harder for him to like be sneaky because she's like, I know you. Other than that, yeah, I love the cop stuff. I like that he had his little informant, and he's like, oh yeah, we saved each other's life one time, but it's like, y'all are giving vibes like, yo, it's to be like a little situationship or something like that. So yeah, the whole cop thing, all about it. Loved it. Keep it in there. The Empire stuff is where I kind of I liked it, but I also had a little bit of problems. So I like that the Empire came in, and when the Empire comes in, they come in like, people are like, oh, close down shop, get inside, little Timmy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Let me see your ID. It's like the Empire's everywhere. They can't turn a corner without someone being like, let me see your ID. You know what I'm saying? They're backing up the trains and all of that stuff. The problem I had is with the Inquisitors. So Marok came in, right? He's doing his thing, and then eventually he like hits the knee, and he's talking to someone, and he's like, you know, like, what do you want me to do next? And maybe I'm misinformed, but I could have sworn somewhere it was either in the comics or somewhere else that it's like Inquisitors answer to Vader. They all answer to Vader. He's like top. Maybe it was Obi-Wan, the show, but I could have sworn everyone answers to Vader. So when the 11th brother comes in, I was like, why is this Inquisitor answering to another Inquisitor? It doesn't really make sense, especially because the 11th brother isn't the Grand Inquisitor. I can see if it was like the Grand Inquisitor, but it wasn't. So I was like, I think they just broke the rules, which, I mean, Star Wars does all the time, but, you know, especially with Disney. And the other thing was, like, I was watching them, I'm like, I feel like I've seen these two before. I was like, why isn't Maul just killing them? And so I looked it up, and they both end up dying in separate things to Ahsoka. So I was like, why would you put in two Inquisitors that already have a canon ending? So, because then they can't really die. Like, Maul can't really, like, you know, fuck them up because they already know where they're gonna end. And so, me personally, I feel like I would have liked to fix this, and how I would have done it is I would have had Marok, the first dude, be like, I don't know, number 15, the 15th brother. And when they're fighting on the train, it is Maul, it is Devin, and, the police kid is there. And I would have had Devin kind of fight Jedi style. She's losing. Maul shows up. He's like, you got to use the dark side. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And he's like, use your anger. Maybe the police kid gets kidnapped or something. He's like, I can't save him and fight the dude. You have to use your anger. Go save your friend. She does it a little bit. It feels wrong, but it kind of feels good. She saves her friend. Maul goes in there and kills the 15th brother. And then that would lead to 11th brother having to be called in to kind of, wrap everything up. I just felt like having two Inquisitors that already have plot armor, which kind of like, what are we doing here? And I also think it makes Maul look weaker. And like, Maul's not... The thing about Maul is he's a good fighter, and sometimes he's him, but he's not him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he always loses in the end eventually. Which leads me to, I guess, because we're already here, the biggest thing when I was like watching this series, I was like, there's something missing, and I don't know what it is. And I sat with it, and eventually I figured out that since they brought Maul back, they have this pattern of Maul comes out of nowhere, or maybe he's at a low point. He beats someone, and then he gets beaten, right? And they've actually done this since episode 1. Oh, they didn't know Maul existed, right? Came out of nowhere, fought Qui-Gon and Obi, killed Qui-Gon, lost Obi. They bring him back in the Clone Wars. He's lost his mind. They bring him back. He gets his stuff, fights Obi, beats him. Obi-Wan escapes. They have a round 2 eventually. Obi-Wan beats him again. He doesn't kill him, but he beats him, right? Then they do it again in Clone Wars. Him and his brother, Maul and his brother, almost at death's door. They get saved. They build a syndicate. He takes over the Mandalorians, and he kills Pre Vizsla. 1-up. Then Sidious comes and is like, nah, I can't let you do this. He gets beat. They do it again in Rebels. He's some random dude in the cave. He shows up. He kills 2 Inquisitors. He takes out Kanan's eyes. He loses to Kanan, so he gets beat, right? And then eventually he dies to Obi-Wan. And so they always have this pattern. And I was like, oh, the problem I'm having with this show, or one of the problems I'm having with the show, is that there is no middle part, right? Maul is the Shadow Lord, right? He has his crew, he's doing his thing. But there's no moment where we have him be a boss, like they always show him being a boss, just for him to eventually get beat by Vader at the end. And so I was like, this is where you broke your own formula, which Disney, they did it with Marvel too. They broke their own formula. And I was like, what this show needed for me was a throwaway Inquisitor that Maul could be a badass, and then kill that Inquisitor, show him and show us and Devin why like the dark side is the way, and kind of get her more on that side. And it just didn't happen. So I just kept watching, being like, why isn't he killing these Inquisitors? Until I looked it up and was like, oh, they got the plot armor, bro. They got the plot armor. But that being said, Maul's still cool. I like that he has this moment of like him reflecting on him being a child, and like he's like, oh, I hate like this old version of you or me. And he just sits with it, and eventually comes to the point of like, no, I was put in a situation against my will, literally sold kind of by his mother to Sidious, and then, that training was grueling, and he's just like, no, like, I can't hate you for what happened to me. This is what happened to us, and I need to go out there and make sure it never happens again, which doesn't make sense to me, because it's like, I feel like if you get Devin, you're gonna put her through some grueling training, and you try to make Ezra your apprentice, and you try to make him kill someone right off the bat. So it's like, calling the kettle black or whatever. But I kind of see where they're going with that. But when Maul is doing his thing, especially in the first couple episodes, he is cool. He's marking people left and right. The part in I think it's the 9th episode, where he's like sees everyone, and he just like throws his lightsaber and like cuts down like 9 people at one time. Even being able to handle the Inquisitors is cool. Granted, I mean, he was never had a chance against Vader, which I knew from the bat, but still nice to see someone, brave enough to go up against Vader, even though they usually never had a chance. But kind of going into the end, I mean, like I was saying, I feel like everyone answers to Vader, so, or at least the Inquisitors. So when the Mandalorian was like, there's something out there, and she gets dragged away and we don't see it, I was like, yes, give me the sound. Vader's here, you guys are cooked. You know what I'm saying? It was so great to see him just kind of be like a Terminator. I do kind of wish that he said something to Maul of like, like, who are you or something, and he's like, I'm your replacement. But I also do like that he didn't say anything. What I do like about Vader, especially in this episode or these last 2 episodes, is the same thing I like about John Wick. Is like, I don't need this unstoppable killing force like a horror movie. What I need is someone who almost seems like they're human enough, like they'll take a punch, they'll take a hit, but they come at you so strong, it's just like, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm fighting a bear, like it's over for me. It doesn't matter if I take out its eye or something. So when the Maul pulls down the ruins and you just see him just kind of like shoving rocks out the way and slicing through them, like, oh, this is annoying. Like, it gives a human element to it, but it also feels like, oh, anyone else would be cooked in this situation, but he's like, don't worry, I'm gonna get to you. It's gonna take me a second, but I'm gonna push through this. That part where he like puts his hand through the wall again, like a fucking Terminator, he's just coming for him. His aggressiveness, reminds me of episode, what was it, episode, what? Oh, because they did them backwards. I knew what I meant, but I can't get it. What was it, episode like 6, I think? Or episode 5, where he's just like slamming his lightsaber down on the Jedi Master, and he just does it. He's like, I can't do this. Like, we can't. And I like that they're teaming up and fighting Vader, and he's just like this force. But they got that moment where they slice his shoulder. So again, this moment of like this realism of like, yeah, we can hurt this guy, but like not enough to be like, oh, we can do this. It is enough to be like, okay, there is some sort of like human element to all of this, but like we're out of our league. Like, this is it. So I do like the moment of like Maul sees it. We can't do this, and he just throws the Jedi. He's like, you figure it out. Gotta take your apprentice. Bye. And you get the part of Devin kind of going to the dark side. But again, I feel like it would have hit more if she was able to get angry and actually kill a second Inquisitor and kind of like fully cement her of like, yes, come to the dark side with me. But again, because I chose 2 Inquisitors that die later, it's just kind of like, doesn't hit as hard, Disney. Why didn't you think that through, Dave Filoni? Speaking of people that died, right? We got Maul's crew. I feel half and half about the Mandalorians that like exploded. Because one is like, don't portray my boy Maul. But also like from their perspective, it is like, this dude's losing his way. He is obsessed with like getting this girl to like join us. And also they're just like, we just want to get paid more. So I feel like that's pretty reasonable. So I did feel some type of way when they exploded. Because like, I kind of see where they're coming from. But also like, you ran away from the crew. So it's like, you get the one brother dying. Which is kind of like, oh, that's sad. He's, it's just his other brother now, but that brother gets gunned down and then jumps in and dissolves into acid. It's like, oh, that must hurt for however long you're conscious for that. But it's one of those things where like sometimes in Star Wars, I feel like the most part in Star Wars, you get hit with one blaster shot, you're dead, and he got hit with like 6 of them, and then he died. So I'm like, what's the rules here, Disney? What's the rules? So in the last video, I was like, I don't like Spybot. Okay, I don't like the way he like chirps all the time and is like making jokes and stuff. I wish he was just like a cool little spy bot and didn't say anything. Because he talks so much, he reminds me of that one small transformer from the Michael Bay Transformers. When he died, and he was like, Master. And I was like, oh no, they got Spybot. I can't believe they made me care about this little freak. Because I didn't like him. All right, I felt like it was forced humor, but I didn't want him to die. So I did feel some way that this little thing went right. This little droid, he's like, and I thought he was just gonna get sliced in half, but he's like, Master, no. I'm like, oh no, spy. But he was the worst of us, but he was the best of us. Rest in peace, Spybot. I didn't know what we had until it was gone. The other thing, speaking of deaths, because the whole crew, I think that's it for the crew, right? And so we go back to the cops, and the dad deciding to sacrifice himself. I get it. I like it. Like, all right, cool. Now the kid's gonna spend time with his mom, and if we get season 2, it'll be more of her story and what it's like to be in the Empire. But I thought it was so weird to have him, like, he goes and he picks up, like, the turret and he blasts a little bit and then it runs out and then he gets hit a couple times. And then I thought, like, oh, he's going to get gunned down. And instead they have him, like, walk through the mist, like, oh, where are you? And I thought that part was so lame. I was like, you made him look so, like, corny. Like, it should have just been gunned down. I think maybe they were trying to leave it open, like, maybe he's still alive or something like that. But I just felt like that whole, like... oh, where are you? I was just like, oh man, this is corny, especially if he is dead. So yeah, I wish they wouldn't have done that part, even if they wanted to leave it ambiguous. No. So I mean, I could probably keep rambling, but I'm gonna leave it at that. Again, I enjoyed the show for what it is. I think there are some things, and this is just a Disney thing of like, what are the rules, power scaling. I do wish we would have seen Maul get a win like we usually do, and like Merc and Inquisitor, especially because in Rebels he did it so easy. He took out 2 so easily, so I was like, why is he having a tough time now? Oh, it's plot armor. That's so stupid. Again, I do think that the show set up a different show and we didn't get that show. I do wish there was like, a moment where Maul has like this gang of people under him that he is willing to or like, their crimes are going around in the city and it's like, oh, what's happening? And we see it's Maul, standing somewhere behind his back like, yes, I am running everything, I am the Shadow Lord, an actual reason for us to call him that. So yeah, I think there are some negatives, but overall this is a good show. I do enjoy it. At first I did feel some type of way, but sitting on it I'm like, no, I did like this. I do feel like in terms of rewatchability, because I always go back to the Clone Wars episodes and I always go back to the Rebels episodes, with Maul in it, of course, like once a year. I feel like for this one I'll probably just go back to the last 2 episodes because they hit so hard. I do feel like a lot of the middle stuff is Maul just kind of like having quick fights and then being separated and then they do it again. And again, that's just the plot armor thing of it all. And I just feel like most of that part didn't really hit for me. But again, I don't think this is a bad show. I think this is good. It's just not what I expected. But maybe that's just my expectations. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. And until next time, peace.